Hi guys. Imagine waking up and realizing that your own consciousness wasn't acting as a closed system. Consider this. We spend our lives optimizing for health through what we eat, what we think, and our environment. But we rarely look at the interface where our internal conditions meet our external influences. Tim and I went to see the movie Disclosure Day, weekend before last. And it's not your normal E.T. movie. Instead, we were presented with a telling look at how consciousness can be accessed and manipulated. And if you saw my video on the deal with the devil, you'll see the parallels between this movie and our real world. The movie also provides a blueprint for how consciousness can be hacked through non-local means. And the video actually strips away the Hollywood mystery to examine the mechanics of energetic interference. And more importantly, how we can reclaim sovereignty over our own frequency. So if you don't mind spoilers, this video can explain a very unusual movie that appears to be tied more in reality than fiction. So in my career as a pharmacist, I was trained to look at the body as a series of linear pathways from A to B. Do this, this happens. But then I learned about quantum entanglement, the spooky action at a distance that Einstein was one of the first to examine. This film, Disclosure Day, forces us to confront some very difficult questions. First, what is quantum entanglement, and does it persist across time as well as space? If external entities are entangled with us, they aren't just interacting with our current state, they are linked to our entire timeline. This implies that abduction or interference isn't a singular event. It's a permanent, multi-dimensional connection. And if they've accessed your frequency, do they also have a bridge to your past, present, and potentially your future? But don't let that worry you, because guys, it just may be a two-way street where we can also access their consciousness. The observer effect in quantum physics suggests that simply by observing a system, you're changing it. If alien or evolved beings are studying us, the act of us consciously and analytically observing them creates a feedback loop. We aren't just the subjects, we are the interface. Wild concept, isn't it? Let's look at this movie. First, I need to say that I went into the movie expecting it to be total fear porn and disinformation regarding extraterrestrial activity. Primarily because it was produced by Steven Spielberg, who was part of an elite group of lobbyists known as the Mega Group, along with, of all people, Les Wexner. So Spielberg's always been on my list of suspicion, let's say. Spielberg also appears in the Epstein files 141 times and in the Little Black Book, but not necessarily on the flight logs that I could find. So I was suspicious, but I was pleasantly surprised. Maybe he's flipped. Maybe it was all an act. I don't know. But he goes way back with the elite. So let's look at the antagonist in this movie, which is a company known as Wardex, and they act as the hidden hand or the controller. They're the clandestine corporation that functions as the gatekeeper of reality. They aren't just protecting classified files. They are managing the disclosure of our own reality to us on their terms. Think of them as the shadow side of the pharmaceutical, communications, energy, technology, food, and financial industries, all rolled into one. When we seek to heal, they seek to harvest our energy. They maintain large-scale underground facilities where they keep what they call assets, which is actually retrieved extraterrestrial entities and their technology. Sound familiar? Area 51? So if you've been paying attention to the landscape of human control, you know that Wardex represents a terminal or a front-end interface, not necessarily the root of the problem. We must look above the control matrix to understand it. Wardex and the real-life systems that it represents are merely the maintenance crews of a much older, more expansive architecture. So who designed this human cage? Well, when we look at the crash retrievals and the technology being reverse engineered in the film, we're seeing technicians sent by an even higher order of influence. Let's compare this to Big Pharma, which is the chemical enforcement arm. It's the tool used to suppress our biological capacity to perceive what is happening outside of our bodies. And by dulling our sensory bandwidth through dietary and environmental interference, they ensure that we never look up to see who or what is actually pulling the strings of the entire global, multi-generational project. We have to stop looking at these systems as separate entities and start seeing them as a total integrated environment. That is the control matrix that we live in, a total integrated environment. Their goal is to ensure that human consciousness never achieves a closed-looped stability. All right, so let's look at some of these infiltration structures that can access our consciousness. The most obvious is the educational indoctrination system, which trains the consciousness to operate in a linear and materialistic way by blinding us to non-local perception. That's the other side. Non-local perception is things that are not 3D. They're things that we can't see that are happening perhaps beyond our physical existence. Then there's the clinical pharmacological grid, which creates a biological dependency loop, training us to view our own health as something externally manipulated. Our environment is saturated with artificial electromagnetic fields, non-native lighting, which keeps the nervous system in a state of low-level fight or flight. Then there's the food chemical matrix, and that degrades the biological hardware that acts as our receiver. A compromised gut is a compromised organic protection. Then there's the legal bureaucratic labyrinth, and that keeps our consciousness stuck in three-dimensional survival mode. It forces us to constantly project our intent into a paper shuffling system rather than within. The media fear cycle, we can't forget that. It's a mass-scale ritual to anchor people in a frequency of helplessness. It provides a culture of experts who systematically dismantle our own discernment by training us to outsource our intuition. That's exactly what happened during the COVID pandemic. We knew something wasn't right, but we trusted the experts, the scientists. Remember all that garbage? Trust the science. Well, now we're finding out that the science was nothing more than a mass fear cycle. So when you look at this list, you realize that the system is designed to keep you in a constant state of leaking energy. Every aspect of our daily life is a potential breach in the firewall of our system. Now, the crash retrieval sequences that were in this movie are particularly disturbing because they mirror what we don't hear in our real world UAP reports. We've heard about the technology exchange agreement, but the actual study of extraterrestrial crash survivors has always been denied us, and still has, so far. So in the movie, when we look closer at how they treat these entities, they're isolating them, stimulating them, and extracting their energetic signature. It's a clinical, cold, and systematic violation of another entity, just like occurred with us subsequently. It's an inversion of the research where they're studying consciousness to understand the mechanism of possession or access to it. It's the ultimate form of surveillance, not just watching what we do, but extracting the very essence of who we are. And so that brings us to the concept of quantum entanglement. The two main characters are played by Emily Blunt and Josh O'Connor, and they shared a childhood abduction experience. I have to say that the image of this experience in the movie is very similar to what I have seen during regression meditation. Many years later in this movie, Blunt is an empathic meteorologist who receives and broadcasts an alien message while the world was on the cusp of World War III. Timing is amazing, isn't it? O'Connor, on the other hand, the male character, is a mathematician who's able to understand and translate the alien message. So Blunt's ability to look into people's eyes and understand them protected them, while O'Connor's ability to communicate with the aliens made their relationship symbiotic. Ward X gave up just when the message was about to air. They fought it hard, but when they knew they could no longer stop it, they just gave up and allowed Blunt to air the message. After exposing evidence of extraterrestrial interaction and connection, Blunt shared the final message, which was one word: listen. Close your eyes and listen to the voice within. For me, this message is a direction to listen to that voice. When we perceive the meaning in this manner, then the disclosure in this movie isn't about government documents, secret facilities, or even extraterrestrial interaction. The disclosure in the movie Disclosure Day is the disclosure of human potential. Now that we have that foundation, consider that these two shared abduction experiences tied these two people together forever by a concept that we've discussed many times in the past known as quantum entanglement. This is a phenomenon in physics where two or more particles become so deeply linked that they don't act entirely independent anymore. Instead of acting as two separate independent entities, the particles function as a single indivisible system. So if you're talking about quantum encryption, those two particles, no matter where they might be, one at the bank system, one in your home, they act as one inextricable system to protect you. So even when separated by distance, they remain part of this inseparable unit, where what happens to one automatically is tied to the state of the other. In physics, it's described as the two entities having the same wave function, which is a mathematical calculation of probabilities and has nothing to do with waves, as you know them in the sense of the ocean. So it's a mathematical probability calculation is what a wave function is. And in this movie, the probability of the two main characters coming together in the same place at the same time was the same for each one of these people. And that is what enabled them to achieve alien disclosure and to destroy the current control system at the same time. Basically, the entangled particles have the same fate, which is fluid and not locked until the very last moment. So things can happen, things can change, we make life decisions, but that entanglement goes with the flow, and that fate is to, in whatever way that might be, assist or act together for one goal, one final goal. Okay, also in this, another thing that was touched on in this movie is what you've probably heard as shape-shifting. And that's where empathic and telepathic powers gave her the ability to look into someone's eyes and interact with extreme understanding and intimacy. Blunt can then project hallucinations or apparitions of loved ones or familiar comforting figures into the minds of enemies. In this way, she effectively becomes someone who is trusted. This allows her to walk through secure facilities, guards, etc., to get to the studio to make this amazing and long overdue announcement. If you remember, the same concept of presenting as a trusted person was also used in the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, when the aliens contacted her and appeared as her father to communicate with her. They projected that. They shapeshifted into her father. Isn't that funny how these concepts continue to repeat themselves? So her shapeshifting, Blunt's shapeshifting, was psychological projection or hallucination induction, not an actual physical transition. And we have to maybe look at some of these things that we've seen as shapeshifting. Is that merely a projection of their psyche? Are they inducing hallucinations on us, or are they actually physically transforming? Okay, so now we got to look at the central technology of this movie, which is a cylindrical extraterrestrial technology artifact that intensifies one's own ability to focus energy. The Vortex Corporation, the bad guys, possessed at least 3 of these devices, and they were recovered from alien sources. In the movie, those devices enable various advanced functions, including telepathic and psychic function or control, rendering users or groups invisible or masked, restoring power systems, and amplifying or interfacing with human psychic abilities. They can also threaten or deter attackers. Vortex misuses it for suppression and domination, while the main characters use it for revelation and connection. Most people look at these and think of science fiction, but I see something very different. I see the work of my dear friend Dan Willis, who created the Vogel-cut crystal and Frill energy generator. And I'm going to put up here next to each other a photograph of the Vogel-cut crystal that I own, I'm so proud to own, and next to a picture of the device, the artifact, the extraterrestrial artifact that was used to intensify energy. And I see a strong similarity. For those who aren't familiar with the Vogel crystal, it's not just a polished stone. It's a precision-cut piece of technology designed to structure light and energy into a coherent frequency. When I hold it, I seek coherence. Dan understood that these crystals could act as a bridge, tuning the human body's bioelectric field. In Disclosure Day, these cylinders act as the ultimate frequency key. It's all around us, guys. It's all around us. If we can only learn to break our minds out of this box that it's been, this cage that they have kept us in for so long. It's all there. I promise you, it's just a matter of opening up and breaking free of these constraints. So the cylinders acted as the ultimate frequency key. When we see the movie characters use them to unlock memory or summon power, it's not magic, it's resonance, which is a state of a system where impediments to alignment are minimized, resulting in the most efficient energy transfer and the maximum steady state amplitude. And I believe that if Dan were here today, he would tell us that these artifacts are simply transducers. They don't create power. They harness the underlying energetic fabric of the universe. They're the bridge between the biological and the non-local or non-seen, and they're used in this movie. Now, before I summarize, let me ask you to please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to ring that bell and go over and hit all, because they default it so that they can censor channels and choose what you see. So be sure when you hit that bell, go over to the all button and hit that. It's a drop down. Don't forget to leave your comments about this. This is about an exploration for us, guys. We're in a position right now. I've never been one to be afraid of making a mistake or looking stupid, because to me, I learned as a very young child, I learned that I can't learn if I'm not willing to take a step out and put myself out there and make mistakes. How do we learn? We learn by the mistakes that we make, and we evolve. So I'm not afraid of that. So please put down your questions. Let's talk about this for the betterment of everyone. I'm trying so hard to find ways. We've got the Tuesday 2 p.m. lives and the Friday 4 p.m. lives, and that's Eastern time, 2 p.m. on Tuesdays and 4 p.m. on Fridays. And we've got a nice little group there, and we're talking about things, and we're exploring what people make fun of us for considering. I've been the black sheep like many of you, so I understand. People prayed for me, and they told me how I'm on a fine line between brilliance and insanity. You know, I've heard that my whole life, and maybe some of you have too if you're attracted to this content. But leave your comments. Let's talk about this stuff. I really try to answer each and every one of you. Share the video with people that are just awakening. Maybe there's people on the fence that don't quite understand, and maybe they even made fun of you before. But if it comes around enough times, and with everything that's happening, what I can tell you is that a large portion of the people that in fact, nearly all of the people that made fun of me when I was telling them back 20 years ago about what's happening with this world and the control mechanism and all of the horrible things that they do for control, those same people, most of them have awoken. And they now, of course, what happens is they always know more than you do, because it's kind of like religion. Somebody all of a sudden gets an epiphany that something's happening, and now they think they know everything. Well, let me tell you guys, we never know everything, and this rabbit hole goes deeper than anyone can ever imagine. So don't for 1 second, when you think you know a few things about the pedophilia and the cannibalism and all, don't even for 1 second think that you know it all, because I promise you don't. And the reason is because your mind is not dark enough to be able to even comprehend or think of such things. So just be humble. Always be humble in this process that we have, because we're about to learn that there's a lot going on that we don't know about. So I'm going to leave you with that. And let me just tell you where we stand. So this movie's done. I've got some notes here for myself to let you know where we're at. This one I can switch to in review. And I've got indicators of the deep state turning over. Indicators that we're seeing. I'm going to summarize that we're winning. Okay? And that's going to be a good one. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but we've got that. Then there was something I'm toying around with called Vietnam Operation Baby Lift, which I think maybe a lot of you haven't heard about, but it ties into this whole human trafficking thing, and it's been going on definitely in an organized manner that far back. And then also we have Dan's video that's coming up on crystals, and it's the communications between Dan and I on the crystal technology. I'm not quite sure. I might break it up into two, or I might include hints about my own starseed activation, because I believe that Dan, the relationship between Dan and why he contacted me was to activate me. I resisted this for a long time and questioned, but I'm beginning to realize that whole interaction with this amazing man was not a coincidence. So you've got that. We've also got the Clean Living channel, which is teaching us how to eat and get rid of these poisons that are making us so sick. And not only how to get rid of them, but I'm actually pushing the envelope a little bit and addressing exactly the conditions. I have to be really careful so that I don't get censored on YouTube for medical advice of any kind. But there are a lot of these toxins that are in our food have real connections to physical ailments that we may be encountering. And so I expose them as well. So if there's something specifically in your food, hopefully you can isolate what that item is, and you can say, hey, I don't want this anymore. I'm going to stop it. Let me see if my body begins to heal itself. Because once the toxins begin to be removed, your body does start to rebuild itself. In fact, the next one that's coming up on the Clean Living channel, which was Vixen asked for, is Tim, because he's my baker. He doesn't take it because he can't because of his work, but he's my baker, and I make RSO marijuana brownies. And I didn't realize it because I've always intuitively known about the benefits. I mean, all we have to do is look at history and old cultures and stuff. I mean, it goes way, way back as far as being a medicine. So why were we taught that it's not one? You know what I mean? So anyway, so that video, which I didn't realize in doing the research, which I did not long ago, but new emerging science has shown us that the endocannabinoid system is critical in neurogenesis. So not only protecting our neurons, but also neurogenesis, which is the birth of new brain cells. I know. Our whole life we've learned about how it kills brain cells. Well, guess what? That was a very flawed 1970 study that's now been debunked. So I just want you to know those things. So the Clean Living channel lab will be in the link. Tim's got a new, if you're a rock fan or you like rock trivia, Tim's a drummer, and he's got a new channel that he's working on, and I'm going to put that link in there. So there's going to be lots of good stuff in there for you in the description of this video. And I'll see you tomorrow, Tuesday at 2 p.m. for the live stream that we're going to talk about. Don't know what yet, but there's been a lot happening, hasn't there? So I love you. Talk to you soon.